So we start by defining variables for each part of the tune. Each variable is a list of pitch duration pairs. Then we define a function called playPhrase that takes that list and plays it. So here's the opening phrase. Sure, we could just define the entire tune this way and be done with it, but one of the core principles of coding is don't repeat yourself. And with the 12 Days of Christmas, boy would we ever be repeating ourselves. Now if we want to chain together several phrases, all we have to do is put them in a list, loop through that list, and call the playPhrase function. As you may already be aware, the structure of the 12 Days of Christmas consists of singing through each day of Christmas sequentially. So let's define a function to play the nth day of Christmas. Each day of Christmas starts with the opening phrase and ends with the partridge in a pear tree. And then in between, we have this generic phrase, which is repeated for all the other days, n-1, of Christmas. We then define a loop to play through the phrases we've created, and let's test this function for day 3 of Christmas. Great! Only there's a problem, which is that once we reach the 5th day of Christmas, the 5 golden rings, the melodies for days 2 through 4 change. Let's take these melodies and put them in a list that represents the n sequence after the 5th day of Christmas. Now let's modify our nth day of Christmas function to test whether n is greater than or equal to 5. If so, we'll again start with our opening phrase, but this time we'll end with our new n sequence. And sandwiched in between, we're going to place the remaining n-5 days of Christmas, using that familiar generic phrase. Let's test this new function out for the 7th day of Christmas. So you probably know what's next. Let's set up a for loop to run through all 12 days of Christmas, and for each value of n, play that day of Christmas. Here we go. Ah, how festive. But what's the point of all of this? Well, on my end, I'm just trying to get that sweet, sweet seasonal engagement for my channel. But I do think there's actually an interesting lesson here. Breaking down the structure of a piece of music in code teaches you something about that structure. And actually, the more efficiently you break down the form, the more you stick to the principle of don't repeat yourself, the more you actually learn about that form. And perhaps I could have gone further. For example, the melodies for the 4 calling birds and the 2 turtle doves in the end sequence are the same, just transposed up and down the scale. If we defined our melodic phrases in terms of scale degrees instead of absolute pitch, we could leverage that to repeat ourselves even less. Can you think of any other ways I could have condensed this code? Also, the other thing that this exercise allows us to do is to then reconstruct weird variations of the 12 Days of Christmas. For example, I might define functions to transpose, invert, or change the speed of any of the little subphrases. I could then import the random library and modify my nth day of Christmas function to invert the phrase 50% of the time, transpose it up or down within an octave, and randomly change the speed. Let's take a listen to this performed on a piano. Now, maybe this isn't your cup of tea. Personally, I love it. But I think if you spend enough time with it and season it to your tastes, you'll see that there's a lot of potential in creative analysis and resynthesis of musical structures. And hey, if you're new to Python and you want to get into it and you love this musical angle, consider checking out my course on Katenze.com. You can also support me on Patreon to get access to this code and the MIDI file of this weird last variation. And with that, all that remains is to wish you all happy holidays.